Welcome to another episode of my podcast, and as my regular listeners will, well, I almost said rabid listeners, that as my regular listeners will know, I'm always delighted to have my guests on, and today is no different. It's brilliant to have Greg Smith, founder of Mixdeck from Imparter, very much part of the sales enablement, sales effectiveness community. Greg, I feel I have known you for ages, it feels like, and have actually met you in person before when people could do that. And today we're going to look at the question: can you or can one be a student of sales? Before I get into that, Greg, as always, I go who, what, why, when, how, where, something to that effect. Give a bit of your backstory that's led you to kind of creating Mixdeck, and then we'll see, as always, where this takes us.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. Yeah, and thank you for having me. And yes, we go back, what, 5-6 years maybe,
something like that.
I think our first meeting at the Ned, when we could actually see people. Greg Smith. I've spent my career very much at the intersection of sales training and sales technology. I have actually held sales roles as well, from an SDR, or back then it was LDR, lead development rep, that was with IBM. I was an account executive with Qualtrics. And a partner manager for a small OEM tech company in Banbury called White Springs. More recently and currently, I am head of digital offerings for a company called Imparter out of London. We're a sales training as a service company, so we have a subscription model. I manage all of our tech that kind of supports the subscription model that we offer, and all the content with it. I've been working on sort of passion projects on the side, and it's come out of kind of two areas. Firstly, it's this interest I've had in this academic space. People are teaching sales as a degree now around the world. We can get into that in more detail, and I just think that's really amazing. And I wanted to contribute to that in some way. And then the other element to this is this concept of self-enablement that I've been working on. Which is, I kind of see it as the next wave of self-guided learning, giving more and more power, I guess, of choice and selection when it comes to methodology and even technology to the actual individual versus just the masses. And so you mentioned Mixdeck. That's a platform I put together, which is basically taking that self-enablement concept and putting it out there to the academic space. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I fit in.
That's where you fit in. Cool. And recently got married and just back from honeymoon.
That's right.
Many congratulations.
Thank you.
About the Spanish word for esposa is also wife and handcuff, but let's not go down that. Let's not go down that route.
It's very new.
The reason I wanted to get you on, because I've been meaning to get you on this for a while, which is my ineptitude at being organised, but. If I think about my journey into sales, I fundamentally fell into sales. So when I was at university, I studied French and Spanish. You can't study sales per se as a subject like you can, I guess, marketing or business or law or accounting, which is a profession, which I'm doing inverted commas for those that are listening, where you have a piece of paper, a qualification at the end of it, which says that you are qualified in this. Because sales, most salespeople, I would suggest, kind of fall into sales because there's there's nothing else to do, but they don't really know what to do. And you see, we were just talking about the kind of the influences out there in terms of the money that can be made. My late father was in sales, and it afforded us a half decent living for me and my brother, and he was in software sales. So I thought, what of it? And then if I reflect on how I kind of learned or been trained, it was either you just learn by fire in the world of kind of real estate or estate agent, and then recruitment. Glenngarry Glen Ross, that 8-minute clip with Alec Baldwin, ABC, was pretty much our training video. There's a phone, there's a list, call, we'll give you 2 weeks and see what happens. And then you mentioned kind of methodologies and so on, and then subject to the methodology that was flavor of the month felt like that. And I guess the investment that your employer was prepared to put in terms of selling, that was all the kind of training that I have had, a kind of learning on the fly, as it were. And I think it's really interesting in terms of what you're looking to do around approaching the academic community. So academia in terms of the round, so not only professors, but I guess the students, students as well, in terms of this is actually fundamentally and should be, I believe, a vocation and a profession. And you have the likes of Andrew Huff, who leads the Institute of Professional Sales, I believe it is now, in terms of pushing UK government around all of this. So where do you believe this can go? And I guess that's wrong order of questions. Can one be a student of sales, do you believe?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think going back to your original point about the doctors, the lawyers, the accountants, that there is a qualification at the end. There's legal requirements, right? There are right and wrong answers in those fields. And so it's never going to be like that. Sales is a more experiential thing, I think, than a sort of accreditation. That said, you also made a point about how a lot of people just sort of fall into sales. Because they didn't know what they wanted to do. And I'm like that. I went to school or university in the States. I did a marketing degree because I'd seen Mad Men and I thought, well, Don Draper's kind of cool. But like those jobs don't exist, right? So everyone's going into marketing and then coming out and ending up as a SDR. And so I see the opportunity in the academic space less about that qualification. Yes, you get a piece of paper at the end of that, but a lot of companies aren't even requiring a degree anymore.
Yeah, well, no,
which is brilliant, really. However, you've got a 4-year period there, or 3 in the UK, I guess, where you've got this captive audience where they can be prepared. Mm-hmm. So it's less about that qualification. It's more about being prepared for this role, which is very practical, mm-hmm. very experiential, and very hands-on. And so that's what really excites me. And I'm not an academic, and I did decently well at school, but I don't know. I normally found ways to hack my way into a good grade. So I look at what some of these programs are doing out there, and one of my favorite professors, Robert Peterson at NIU, he doesn't show PowerPoint and textbooks and stuff. He's got people doing improv in class and doing weird stuff. Sometimes they go out to the park and just have the class there. Really wacky. I mean, it is in Chicago. It's just down the road from Second City Work. So it's really in their blood in that program to do all this improv. At Baylor, Andrew Dixon's program, they've got students selling sponsorships to their athletic events and career fairs and things like that. So they're actually giving these people true selling experience. I mean, they've got Salesforce, they track their leads, they take them through a sales process, and they actually close deals. When I first heard about that, I thought that's really scary. You've got an 18-year-old representing your university. Like, you've got to think about your brand there. But I just see opportunity there. Whereas I think a lot of programs still, and a lot of people out in the professional world would look at that and think through kind of elitist lenses that sales isn't an academic thing. That's for people who didn't get into college or something like that. And and maybe that was true back in like the 80s or something, like when my dad was coming up and it was the Glenngarry Glen Ross kind of thing. But I think that's all changed. I think the stigma around sales is, if not completely gone, it's fizzling, and it's taken more seriously. But we have to be realistic that it isn't a law degree. It's not an engineering degree. It's not a pre-med, or it's nothing like that. It's always going to be slightly different, but it's legit. It's where the jobs are. And I think a lot of universities are starting to think that's where a lot of money can be made, because companies are taking note and they're thinking, I can save a whole lot of my recruitment fees if I just go and work with these universities, sponsor their sales program, and instead of this shotgun approach that they have to do now with all their recruiters. They can just really target and partner with these programs and create almost like a farm league, which that's an American expression, but like in their baseball teams, like they call them farm leagues, or
an academy,
like a football academy, and so that's kind of where I see it. So I absolutely do think you can be a student of sales, and it's kind of one where you never really graduate either, because you constantly learn, right, and change is a continuous loop. So I think it's a resounding yes.
And again, I guess where I was going with the qualification piece is, yes, like a doctor or a lawyer, there are things that are fundamentally you have to be qualified in because it means lives or this or that. But I guess it's that, and I know this is what the Institute of Professional Sales is trying to go towards. It's more like SEMA, so it's more like marketing in terms of you have gone through recognized courses and training and development so that you are, a piece of paper is a piece of paper, right? But you've gone through a recognized body which has recognized your skills in terms of that area of expertise around marketing, for example. And to your point, sales actually, and I know that it's things like ethics and trust and all that kind of thing is actually key in a sales role. And I think that's half the challenge around the sales industry, is that when you are having to work with or deal with organizations or situations where that is not being exhibited, and there's absolutely no recourse whatsoever to said individual other than lots of people getting ranty or the deal not happening, I do feel that there is an opportunity to have something where it's this person has been accredited in this, and they if anything, to protect the organization that they are working for. It's a bit like it's going after all the risk training, internally in the organizations. It's one has to do it, but if that employee then goes and does something they shouldn't do, the organization go, well, they did their risk training and they passed all that, and so on. But I also, in terms of the fact that, and I hadn't really reflected on this, and this is right for most industries, let's be honest, but actually sales is super exciting because there's always something new, always changing. You can actually move industries, probably, and by industries I mean what the product or service you're selling, really easily if you are a good salesperson, right? And I think that's the opportunity that also presents itself. But what I like about what you're doing with Mixdeck is the way that it's being presented, and I'll put the links here somewhere for people to go and have a look at. But the way that you have thought about the opportunity that, again, I hadn't thought about that kind of academy play, that rather than hiring people and spending 3 to 6 months onboarding them and they fail, and that's been a 3 to 6 months kind of waste of time, effort on energy, even 12 months on any part. If you can start to bring these people into an SDR role or even full cycle role, but they've already gone through training, degree, some course, there's some kind of evidence that by the time they get to sitting and making that first call, they know roughly how to construct a cold call, or they know how to write an email. I know we were debating about email scripts and all this kind of stuff, offline as it were, but they understand sales engagement platforms or cadences, or they understand how to kind of, pull this all together. I believe that, that would be a really valuable thing to be doing. So what has the response been from academia in the round in terms of, Mixdeck and what you're doing and what you're seeing, the varying kind of events that you've been to?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so we're very positive because there's a huge momentum shift. Like these programs, the growth is, I don't know if it's quite exponential yet, but it really is starting to boom. Companies are taking notes, so they're anything new you can bring to them is going to help them. Mm-hmm. They'll lap it up. But just a quick point on those things that. The company's looking and they know that these people have been through some sort of training. I think that's huge, and I think that's why I'm quite passionate about that space, because you can move the needle for a student, for an 18 to 23-year-old, mm-hmm. massively compared to someone who's 45, and selling. Like in the imparted world, we train professional salespeople. We're never going to move their performance needle 80% or something, because we don't need to, right? You can move just percentage points, and that based on their quota is what we need. But I like that you can take someone from completely knowing absolutely nothing about selling to someone who's hireable, right? I think that's really, really huge. And so people are taking notice of that, and the momentum's there. And so, I've been speaking at different events about what I've been working at. Like I was at the Sales Educators Academy recently in Birmingham, kind of presented this whole self-enablement concept of mine, and it just landed really brilliantly. By the time I finished and I sat back down, my LinkedIn blew up, and someone was there, various people saying, I'm using this in my class next semester. And so what excites me is that while this is for academia, like I intend this to be something that's usable by these students, but after they graduate, and I want it to be their first click resource from the time they are a student all the way to the time they retire. We don't really have that. There's not this platform, there's not a place to support your sales performance, development throughout your whole career. You go and work for a company A and you're given Salesforce and Mind Tickle and some LMS and all these different tools, and then you change job, you have to hand it all back. I mean, it doesn't come with you, which is really weird to me. So Mixed's designed to be that thing which you use to kind of build your own sales DNA or fingerprint, and take that with you and tweak it as you go. The same way you do with LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn's so successful because you own LinkedIn. I own LinkedIn, right? It's my account. I don't have to hand it back. If I've got Navigator, sure, I might have to hand that back if I change job. But I think that's why that's so powerful. And so Mixed's designed to be like that. And I think that's why it's had such a positive result. It is a freemium thing, and I'll think about revenue stream later. I think that the purpose right now is to do something really cool and good, and it's my passion project. It's on the side. I have a day job that I love, and so it allows me to experiment with this thing and not have to worry so much about revenue. But yeah, I think people are really excited. There's a good amount of content on there. You're on there. You're one of my first. I need to get
this on there as well. Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
I need to get more on there for you. But again, just kind of reflecting on, I like the fact that there's a number of things going on in my head. It's like, I think also what I like about this is it can also protect students. Because it could be, actually, I've realized sales isn't for me, and sales isn't for everyone, right? And that's not a negative. It's not a bad thing. You do have to be cut from a certain cloth to be able to, to deal with the shit that comes with it, right? In terms of being and being told to go away and F off if you're starting at the bottom of the pile, and all the cold calling, all this kind of stuff. And too often I've seen in my recruitment in my former life, even peers that came and joined our organization, just burned out after 2-3 weeks, and this just isn't for me. It's like, that's cool, it's okay, but imagine if they could get a feel for that beforehand, and then they realize, actually, I don't want to do this at all, so I'm not going to be wooed by an influencer on TikTok talking about you can make $300,000, and you can, but those people are far and few between in terms of make that kind of cash, and they've probably been doing it for a while. They've probably got a base set of accounts that know them really, really well. But I guarantee when they first started out, they were given the crappy accounts, which no one wants. Your territory's been rinsed, time and time again in terms of what. But there's this belief system that, or rather, the sell is that you can make good money. Don't get me wrong, but I'm hugely passionate about sales. I love it as an industry, and it's served me extraordinarily well to end up where I'm at in terms of doing what I'm doing. But the other aspect of, and I guess this is, let's just be clear, Greg, isn't Web3 or metaverse or any of that kind of thing, but I'm now exploring I've got a guest recording coming up called Becky, who's a Web3 expert. And this concept of Web3 in terms of you own it, not the machine, as it were. Because we own LinkedIn, but if Microsoft went bust, then we don't own LinkedIn, right? But fundamentally, it's not going to happen, okay? But I do like that concept, which I hadn't kind of also thought about, is that you can start to own your sales career. And this is certainly speaking with the likes of Patrick Joyce and Justin Michael. Their view is that eventually they believe the SDR role will kind of almost cease to exist, and why do we always weaponize sales? But you'll become a gun for hire, right? But you will have your own tech stack. You will have your own. I see, Mixed can be that's your kind of your briefcase, if you will, that you take around with you, with everything there that you need, all the enablement plus all the the kit that you bring in. You can be that person for hire, to go and help somebody grow a territory and so on. And there's nothing out there really that I'm aware of that is, there's lots of self-enablement platforms, but they're so expensive in terms of, if you want to use an individual, typically you've got to be part of an organization to get access to it. But it's not looking at what you're trying to do, is actually follow that journey, I believe, and that journey of that sales, documenting that sales career.
Yeah, the gun for hire thing, and I've spoken with Justin as well about it, is absolutely where it's going, and you know, maybe gun for hire isn't the right phrase, but it kind of is a sort of mercenary style selling. And I kind of look almost like a football player, you know, that they might have come up through the farm leagues or the academies and all that, and they go team to team, but like they build their own style of play. I mean, Ronaldo has his style is unique. I mean, even the weird way he stands before a free kick, right? He's got his way of doing things, but each time he changes team, he tweaks to fit into their play, right? But he doesn't have to. It doesn't have like a lobotomy and start again. But that's almost what we expect, you know, historically.
Some footballers probably should, though.
yeah, maybe. But you take it with you, and that's exactly what self-enablement is supposed to be. And I went further than that. That's why I think it's another iteration of building on the self-guided learning, because self-guided learning to me is just learning, right? It's just concepts versus doing, and it's and the tech response to that has really just been to digitize the same problems that exist in workshops and classrooms, and it's, you know, linear courses and modules with a quiz at the end, and so you've got the Udemy's and Udacity's and LinkedIn Learning, all that kind of stuff. And I'm not dogging that. I just think we're ready to move on or build on it, because there's always going to be room for a knowledge transfer event, but I think we're trying to flatten that curve and make it more just continuous learning in the flow of work. Whereas anything with a course is something you do and then you finish and then you kind of don't revisit. So you know, Mixtech is designed as you know, artists. So you and I are on there. I might change that to author, but and you know,
I want to be an artiste, please.
An artiste, yeah, you can be, and yeah, you create tracks that cascade from albums, right? So it's got that music taxonomy deliberately, because, you know, I look on my phone here and the music app, and, you know, I've got like my running playlist or relax or whatever, right? And there's some songs might be in both. And so the idea is you can start to construct these things with just unique little assets of content and resources. It doesn't, and that's what I'm saying. It's not just learning content, it's doing content. So as a salesperson, there'll be things that you need in order to do your job, like case studies and, I don't know, an NDA, right? You probably use NDAs all the time. So somewhere to compile all this and build out these playlists that are contextual for certain types of opportunities that you're working on. And, you know, it's something that you would tweak and you know, perfect as you move through your career and change roles and everything. And so, so yeah, that's exactly what it's intended for. And I think, you know, tools will fall into that, because my problem with the tech world, and it's, you know, ironic because I'm very much in it, is you look at like you know, Nancy Nardin does that sales tech landscape every year. I think they're owned by SBI now or something, but you know, and it's a million logos, and it sort of grows every year because they're all just filled with venture capital, right? They're out there trying to sling licenses to each other largely. They're all these SaaS companies selling to each other.
That's crazy.
And yeah, pennies on the dollar. They sell it because someone knows the VP of sales at this company who's never going to have to use the tech. They just force the people below them to use it, and then wonder why the adoption is so low, and then they switch the following year. And because I think people use what they choose, right? That nobody's actually asking the salesperson what they want to use. And again, they switch jobs, they have to hand back all that tech anyway. So like, it's no wonder that these things have such poor adoption rates. You know, and I think, you know, Justin's spot on in saying that, you know, they'll start to build their own little tech stack, an individualized tech stack, and maybe they remain I-35 or something. Yeah, maybe that's the world we go into. That would be what's the American equivalent? W9.
I don't know, but I know it basically sold to independent.
Remaining independent, and so that's kind of that's the world I'm trying to cater to. And I just, starting with students, because I just find it, I like the purpose.
And reflecting on a brilliant book I've just finished called Digital Darwinism, the second edition by Tom Goodwin. What he was reflecting on in his writing is that what we are doing is making technology fit old processes. So he gave an example, basically an email looks like a letter, this meeting looks like a meeting. And if we didn't, and he actually said, go to an 8-year-old and ask them what they would do. So don't just go to an 8-year-old and ask them, how would you read as, if you had to do this, if you had to get that from there to there, or this was the outcome, how would you go about doing it? And he said, see what the outcome is, and then go and put your own brand on it and charge thousands of consulting dollars for it and put them on a retainer. And I believe that, on that technology piece and the sales process per se, is that it is a lot of technology that's just stuck onto a process that somebody did 25 years ago, because that's the only way. And they haven't actually gone to, I get so frustrated when you see people talking about being buyer-centric. So you're not buyer-centric at all. You're forcing the buyer through a journey that fits your agenda, not their agenda, which then comes full circle back to actually helping students actually maybe reinvent sales processes or reinvent how things are done, notwithstanding the whole SaaS to SaaS sales thing. Retention rates are absolutely catastrophic for most part. If they get a year under belt, then they're good. They're certainly not going to get 3, which is why Marcus Kalki believes that sellers should be rewarded on year 3 renewal. And they don't get rewarded. So, that will incentivize a different behavior, right, to keep people happy and on the platform. But then picking up again back to the mixed step piece around the way that it enables you to kind of cure, similar to, you're not a Spotify yet of sales enablement, but I know that's the vision. Because what is also great about Spotify, for example, is that not only can you curate your tracks that are for that mood, it will suggest other music to you that you would. I've come across artists that I'd never even consider, because back in the day when none of this existed, you went to HMV or Tower Records and you just stuck to what you wouldn't risk paying 14 quid for a CD if you weren't sure that it was going to be any good. Whereas now, with the technology that has us, and that also opens your mind to other ideas, other thoughts, rather than religiously following Sandler or religiously following Challenger. Because you can take a bit of that works for me, a bit of that works for me, and a bit of that works for me. And to your point, Frankenhack the whole thing to be Greg's own sales methodology wrapped around that. Now, I'm going to be massively unfair now, because as we've been talking and my brain's been going, and I touched on Web3, and I shouldn't go down this route. It's not fair. And we didn't ask. I don't give my guests much prep anyway, because I want this to be as natural as possible. However, one can't ignore kind of virtual reality and AR as a learning mechanism, as a learning pathway, if you will, or as a medium to learn. And now you know where I'm going with this. I'm going to keep waffling a bit longer to give you time to shape some
a little panic attack.
Greg's rolling his eyes at me, going, "Alex, you dick, why are you asking me this question?" And I don't know the answer, by the way. I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Do you believe that? I'm not talking metaverse here. I'm talking virtual reality as the medium has a place in coaching, learning, development purely from a sales perspective. And as I've asked that question, you said something to me earlier in the podcast, which I'm not going to go with, but I think I may have a bit of an answer.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting question. I think there's a million ways you can answer. Firstly, I don't think anyone knows. If they did, they'd be very wealthy, wouldn't they? But I think obviously it will. I mean, tech's, we're always going to get more techie, aren't we? It's not like an industry will just ignore things. And nobody's held out against the internet except Primark. Do you know what I mean? So so inevitably we'll embrace it in some way. I don't know if it's going to be sort of iRobot, sort of these machines selling to people. The one area I thought, because I'm working for Imparter, we're obviously to do with performance improvement, learning and development, more so than like executing sales, like like the power dialers or sales.
Yeah.
You mentioned sales loft and things like that. We're more on L&D. So that I have been sort of trying to tackle that. And I think one area is kind of the coaching at scale. And some companies are heading that direction. If you look at Chorus and Gong and all that, right, they're recording calls. You know, I think what they're doing is just gathering data.
Yeah.
And they're gathering real data too. You know, one of the best way you can learn to sell, I think, beyond the baptism by fire, is through role play practice, right? You know, sales is very unique in that we do, you know, sort of, I don't know if you can, like, that much practice and that much doing. I don't know if people can see the videos on your podcast.
Well, they can't, they're listening to it, can they, Greg? So what Greg is doing is doing a very small amount of practice.
An inch for practice.
For those of you that can the brain, the neural networks that it implants in your brain can visualize this. So well, there are people seeing this, Greg, well done. There are also people listening in the ether.
Yes, exactly. So the ratio is basically off. We do bugger all practice and we just dive right in. Whereas, you know, football or boxing or music, whatever, it's almost entirely practice and a tiny amount of actual performance. And so there's a huge deficit there. And I think virtual reality, you can use the data that's out there that systems like Gong are collecting, and you can use, maybe it's AR more than VR, but to take that and create learning at scale mechanism. I mean, I could have a fake, you know, a VR based or sort of a machine learning based conversation with a bot, but the bot's gathering real conversations that's actually happened. You see what I mean? So I think it's going to be used to augment things that we already do versus replace anything that we do. I think from a learning and from the L&D perspective, I don't know if that was a sort of wishy-washy answer.
Yeah, no, it's not. I agree with you. No one knows the answer. As I was thinking, I think I believe that role playing in a kind of VR environment, and I think this will be different sales and different. It'll be more relevant for some kind of sales industries than it will be others. I believe kind of role playing scenarios in VR, provided and the avatars are getting pretty good now. In that environment, but I hadn't. The AR piece is an interesting one because certainly customer service organizations, I think ABN AMRO, one of the big banks, are doing this with their customer service reps, and I think it's on a Microsoft platform, that it's hearing the conversation in real time and then encouraging them to go, oh, they said this word, holiday, upsell them an insurance product, or they said this word, upsell them, or have they thought about this, and that kind of that real time stuff. But yeah, AR, I can kind of almost see that taking it the next level. Not only that, but it's surfacing, information from, this is the marketing material they've received, this is what they've been. So you kind of got a quasi minority report-ish environment. I guess the next challenge around this, I saw the other day that they now, some companies actually managed to get AR contact lenses working, which is insane. If you really those of you who watch Black Mirror, remember that episode, or all Black Mirror episodes tend to end badly, but that was not a great ending. I guess it's the next, and this is also where I'm seeing kind of sales generally needing to go on the technology piece, is the assimilation of data in real time. Because and this is kind of the old guard versus the new guard, and I hate kind of putting, that whole generational thing. It's across all pieces. But back in the day when you didn't have access to all this information, and it was just, trial by fire. It was Glenngarry Glen Ross. It was just phones, and that's all you could do, and having meetings on the golf course, as it were. Is that this is my opinion, but I have a sense that there's so much data out there that a lot of reps are just overwhelmed by it. And they don't even know how to assimilate it, what to do with it, what that then means in terms of doing the thing next, because they're being, and this comes back to being a student of sales and doing this before you get into the industry, is that, if you are on one piece of technology, as you've touched about, that piece of technology is the only way to sell, if that makes sense. And it has to be done with this number of emails, this number, multiple touch points, blah, 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 open rates, close rates, center rates, all this kind of stuff. And then I feel for these individuals. They're sitting there each day going, well, what am I just going to tweak that button a bit and do that button a bit, rather than actually, for the most part, you need humans in a sales process. Yeah, okay, the low volume, high volume, the high volume, low value stuff. I get it. You and I could go and buy 100 Salesforce licenses today and not even need to talk to Salesforce, or Sales Nav licenses, not even talk to LinkedIn. But as you start to move up the scale, humans are going to be involved at some point in time. And that, again, coming back to kind of what Mixtec and why I think it's such a great thing that you're doing, that you can start to coach people like from day one that yes, technology is an enabler, but you shouldn't rely on it. I'm now waffling. Anyway, I think you got the sense of what I'm about.
No, I do, and I think you're circling this term that's I've heard bandied around, and indeed I've sort of plagiarized a little bit, but it's decision intelligence. And it's like, so like we live in this big data world, and I think we're at this point of, well, now what? So
yeah,
I've got it in a dashboard. I'm like, oh God, there's so much data. I don't even know what to do with this. And it's using technology to make a decision.
I'm going to plagiarize that as well. Decision.
Go for it. Yeah. Yeah, I really like. I can't remember where I heard it, but I really liked that. And I love analogies, and I'm not very good at coming up with them. But what I thought of was like, if you think about a car, like in, I don't know, let's say like a Porsche in the 70s, and you're driving down the Autobahn, it's so manual, right? You've got your dashboard, the clocks, you're looking at everything. It's obviously going to be a manual gearbox, and there's a turn coming up, you're looking at the speed limit, you're looking at your speed. You're having to do everything, and you've got the data, and then you do this. So what? A lot of cars now, particularly when you look into like the world of Tesla and stuff like that, they're sort of looking at that data and then doing the thing for you. Like there's a car up in front, it's going to slow down, or even keeping you in your lane, which is really weird when the steering wheel jolts. So it's going that next step, and I think that's where tech is going. But yeah, maybe driving's a bad example because we'll go to.
No, but I get what you're saying, because it's like a sports car in terms of, you turn traction control off a Ferrari, you and I are going to put it in a bend, put it in the wall. You turn traction control, we can pin it around a corner at 100 miles an hour on a racetrack. Whilst we're not quite, you may well be, I'm certainly not. The car will do most of the decision for you, whereas back on your analogy of the old Porsche, you had to manage understeer, oversteer, what gear you're going in, and so on. Yet there still has to be the human still fundamentally will make those the decisions, but now it's about being augmented by, and I touched this the other day in terms of my post on barbecue, is that I still feel that, and I kind of move different directions on this, but you need to know what to do next based on the data, but don't necessarily always trust what the data is saying. I do feel, and it's just hard for if you're early on in a career, but sometimes it's like you look at it and go, yeah, I know it's telling me that, but you've helped me shrink down the options I'm going to go for, but still my instinct still is leaning to the one you're least recommending, because I've got other stuff in my head through experience that actually, now I know that I've got that in the back of my mind, but actually I'm going to go this route. So I guess it's a bit like football. Going back to the football analogy, they always think goalkeepers study people, penalty takers, but everyone's always trying to second guess in terms of what way they're going to go. But that decision intelligence piece, I think, is an interesting. That's an interesting.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Actually, it's like that. This data can provide a confidence rating, and then you make the final decision. Yeah. It's like booking on Kayak, and it gives you buy now or don't buy that. Wait, buying the
old scarcity tactic in terms of people are currently looking at this right now. It's like, are they really?
and I watched that film Sully the other day about the.
I haven't seen it. The airline pilot who landed
on the Hudson. Yeah, and there's the court case that kind of unfolded from that was like the computer says you should always do that. Did he do the right thing? He could have made it to Newark or whichever other airport in New York, but it never took into account the human element of the situation, the emotion. It's like it's all very well comparing it to a computer that you've programmed for that exact scenario to say a split, but like it doesn't take into account the other elements. And I thought that's a really good example of obviously the dashboard of a plane is just incredibly confusing for someone like me who doesn't understand flying. So he has to take all of that and the fact that he's got 200 people behind him, and there's other planes in the sky, there's a city right there, all these different variables,
all the determining factors.
And so I think sales is like that. And you talked earlier about these methodologies that want you to go through this rigid process, and I just think those days are over of I worked with another methodology company where their methodology was built around the chevrons, right? You do this and you have to do these things, and there's a verifiable outcome, and then you can't even, in their tech, you can't even move on to the next stage until you've done these things. And it's so naive. And I'm not on this to plug in part of it, but something that's really cool with ours is we kind of break that apart. You've got, it's more of a matrix of things you can choose to build your case for selling a deal versus this really strict linear thing that you have to do. Because that it sort of ignores the human bit from both sides, the buyer and the seller.
And that's the thing. There are two people on either side of this. Greg, we could talk for hours.
Yes.
Absolute pleasure. I will put the varying links to wherever in the, not the chat because this isn't live, but in the thing and on the podcast. So if people want to reach out to you on LinkedIn, is that the best place to?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you can get me at greg@mixdeck.io, or LinkedIn's probably best.
Cool. And so if you do contact Greg, please mention the podcast in terms of if you listen to it and you want to learn more. I highly recommend you have a look at Mixed Deck, especially those of you who are of an age where you've got kids who are university stage. Absolutely worth having a look at. I just had a thought in my head. I'm going to speak to the head chief digital officer at Exeter University, who I know very well for you, Greg, to see what we can do there. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, you know what to do. If you want to recommend people to be on the podcast, you know what to do. Everyone knows where to find me. But for now, Greg, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and input, and also what you're doing in terms of your passion project, Mixed Deck. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.